Hello and welcome to another video. Today I am bringing you some reviews on the horror thriller that I've been reading lately. So everything in this video will be spoiler free unless I say otherwise. I'm going to try and keep most of these spoiler free so that you can watch these videos without the fear of getting too much information, and I'm going to try and stick to vibes and vibes alone with a little bit of detail that you would understand if you pick up any of these books. But if I do spoil, I will have it, adequately marked because I don't want anyone to get spoiled if they don't want to be. So the first book I'm going to talk about today is This Is Where We Talk Things Out by Caitlin Marcoux. And this is a short horror novella that I actually found on Amazon. I think this cost me like 2.50. It's definitely under £3. I will put like a little link here to say how much it is at the moment that I am um recording this and editing this. But this is definitely worth the money I paid for this. In this, we follow Miller, who has a distraught relationship with her mother, Sylvie. And when her dad passes, this relationship is like strained beyond belief. Her mom doesn't agree with her lifestyle, which in turn she doesn't believe in her, having a woman as a fiance. And there's like a lot of mistrust and, neglect and abuse in their relationship. But Miller decides that she wants to try at least, and she decides to go on a girls' trip away with her mum for the weekend. This is where things just go downhill, absolutely off the rails. This was compared to Misery, um, and Darling Rose Gold. And I'll tell you, I want to read Darling Rose Gold now because I haven't read Misery either, to be fair, but I've watched the film. So maybe Misery and Darling Rose Gold can be books I add to my list to bring to you in a review. And I can kind of tell you if this is like an adequate um, comparison or comp titles. But let me talk about this first. So I give this a 3.5 star. The atmosphere in this was done so well. You're in a remote cabin and there's a storm outside, so you're kind of like trapped. So it falls into that like isolation um setting, like an isolated thriller horror setting. And the interactions between Miller and her mum are so awkward, and they're written well though, because they're awkward but in a well written way. I just felt so bad for Miller because this was not a trip that anyone would want to go on, or what you would bargain for. And I give this author her due because in such a short book she managed to creep me out. I was like, nope, I would never like to be in this setting. This is horrible to think of. I also really enjoyed the ending because the ending is dark. Like it leaves off like this book leaves you feeling hopeless for the characters, and you're just like, that's not going to end well. Like, I have a theory about what happens at the end of this book, um and I'm like, it's not going to end well. But like it just stops, like it stops after such a like traumatic intense scene that you're just, and it's like a cliffhanger essentially because you just don't know what happens next. Like you It's not a cliffhanger, it's like an open-ended ending, and I am fussy with those because sometimes I hate them, sometimes I like them. It's very few and far between. I really love this one. This one left on an open end that I was quite happy with. So if you're not happy to read an open-ended book, then I wouldn't recommend this. But if you're looking for something that's like psychologically fucked up, um isolated setting, with open ending story left off. I don't know what I'm trying to say. If you're looking for any of those things, then this would probably hit the mark for you. It's also really short, ooh, coming in at 82 pages. So it's really short, and hopefully by the time you see this, it will still be a very reasonable price on Amazon. But I will say that if you go to um Darklit Horror's website, then you can pick up some of these books for free. I picked up the book that was mentioned at the back of this book. Yeah, so I picked up 23 McCormick Road, and it's a free to read novel by the same author. And if you go to their website, you can pick up this author's book that I picked up, but there is a few other books on that site. I think I'll leave like a screen recording so you can see what I'm talking about on screen. It's definitely worth looking at if you want something that's free to read and to introduce you to some new authors. So potentially the book that I picked up, 23 McCormick Road, might be in my next thriller horror review, because I really enjoyed this one from this author. The next book I read was Saving Noah by Lucinda Berry, and I hated this book. I gave it 2 stars. I don't know if I should lower it to a 1. This book made me so angry. Um, so in this book, we follow Noah, who is a straight A honor roll student. He has won trophies. He has been in the papers. Everyone thinks he's the golden boy. He is 16 and he um like helps lead they call it Pee Wee League, and I just don't think that sounds right. Like it's like Little League swimming. That's what I would call it, because Pee Wee just doesn't sound right to me, and I don't like it. So I'm gonna go with Little League. So he trains a group of young swimmers because that's what he is like known for. He is a competitive swimmer, and he comes clean to his mum that he has abused the little girls that are in this little league. And from this is the basis of the story. You follow the mum's perspective. And I've forgotten the mum's name, but I hate her. What is her name? I don't think I wrote it down. Adrian. Adrian. So Adrian is the mum, and I don't like her. The whole way through this book, you feel her denial. You feel her, excuses. It was so hard to read. It was so hard to read. It made me so angry. Um, like obviously, this is a conversation that is really hard to have, and when you are going into a book knowing that there's a hard topic at the center. You want some nuanced conversation. You want like a well-rounded story of other people's points of view, perspective, and stuff. You didn't get that in this book because you only got her POV. You got some of Noah's, but not much. Um, so staying in her POV just felt dire. Like I had to take breaks from this book because she just made me so irrationally angry. Um, at one point, um, she says this quote, and if you are not this, most of this is in the synopsis, so it's not like it's a spoiler. But if you want to feel an inch of how angry I felt reading this book, this quote's going to do it to you. I didn't blame the girls, though it wasn't their fault. They had no idea what they were doing. None. Their touch and exploration was completely innocent. Nothing sexual about it, but it hadn't been innocent for Noah, and he wasn't their age, which made it a crime. I understood that, but their lives weren't going to be ruined forever. They just weren't. But the world wouldn't be satisfied until they'd annihilated him. He was more of a victim than those girls, but society would never see it that way. They saw it as him getting what he deserved. How delusional, how delusional do you need to be to think that an abuser is more of a victim than the people he abused? Adrian, Adrian, get your shit together, woman. Get your shit together. I don't care if there's like a nuanced thing about the love for a son and how far you would go to protect your children. There's just doesn't exist for me in this situation. Sorry, I am still a little bit ill. Um, yeah, I just did not like this. And then also, like, on top of this, so you do get, like, the family is in such a distraught place. So there is a lot of conversation around, the family. And also the fact that Adrian has a young daughter, the same age as the ones that Noah, you know, abused. And, like, it comes down to protection of children, but, like, why are you putting one's needs above the other? And, like, effects that this had on the family. And I do wish it went into more of a psychological standpoint. I wish we got more from the doctors involved in this story. I wish we got more um, of an analytic view, because I think spending the majority of the time in Adrian's perspective um, done this book a disservice. Because I think if you had, you know, other people's thought process and then thoughts coming in, so if you had Adrian's like denial and standing with her son next to, you know, a doctor who is like trained in the ways of the brain and their point of view, and then you had someone like the father who was just like, nope. And let me tell you, the last part of this book, the twist at the end. If I had a physical edition of this book, I would have threw it. But I'm not throwing my brand new Kindle because I just got a new Kindle and it's my baby and I'm not throwing it. But if I had a physical edition of this book, like I would have been fully torquing my windows. Killer Queens reference if you listen to true crime podcasts. And I would be throwing that book out there along with all of my bedroom furniture. Like, no, thank you. I didn't like this. I thought it could have done something. It had a good premise. It could have had, you know, nuanced conversations. It could have went deep into psychology. It could have done something. It didn't do it. The ending made me so fucking angry. And the only person in this whole entire book that I would like to save and who I had any feelings towards, apart from anger, was Katie, the young daughter of sister of Noah, daughter of Adrian, and like I just want to pick her up and run. Like I don't care. I just want to pick her up and run. Like she does not deserve to be in this situation in this week. She was the only likable character, the only sympathetic character, the only character that didn't make me irrationally angry. Um, Save Katie at all costs, I suppose. I do think it would be interesting to read more from this author because this didn't do it for me. But I believe this author is a psychiatrist in specializes in childhood trauma. So there is a book, The Perfect Child, that I am interested in because I do think like having this profession and writing these books, you know, there's going to be a nice new take and a kind of take from a professional. So like I'm interested to see if her other book would hit differently than this book did. Maybe this book just didn't do it for me because I hated it. But maybe her other book will be different. So I think potentially this could be a second chance author for me. Um, in the future, I might read something from her and bring you. If I do, it will be in my next thriller horror review, so you won't miss if I read any more from this author. But I definitely want to give her a second chance and hope that this book was just a dud and that the next one I pick up isn't. The next one is a sequel, so it is Along the River of Flesh by um, Christopher Trina, and I give this a 4 stars. Um, so Gone to See the Riverman is the first book in the series, and if you don't know, that follows Laurie, who is having like pen pal situation with a serial killer who's in prison, Edmund, and he tells her to go along the river, find a key, go to see the Riverman, and that is the premise of the first book. Now, I'm gonna spoil the first book in order to talk about Along the River of Flesh, but there will be no spoilers for Along the River of Flesh. So, spoiling Gone to See the Riverman, at the end of that, Edmund gets free of prison, Laurie ends up dead, and he is on the run. So, in Along the River of Flesh, we take off with Edmund being on the run, and he is going back to the river because he wants to make a deal. He wants to be the entity that is the Riverman. He wants to be more powerful, be more evil, and along the way, he's killing people, and he's a very, very sick person, and like, ugh. But he kind of reminds me of a mix between Jason Voorhees and Michael Myers because he survives a lot of things and comes back from it, and he's also very sick and deranged. But I feel like he's more sick and deranged than even those two killers, and that's saying something. So we follow him on his journey, but we also follow other people. For example, we follow Keith, who is a cop that wants to recapture him. He was the one that caught him the first time, and he plans to do it a second time. And then we follow Gary, who is a private investigator, and he has been, hired by the family of a missing girl, and they want like proof if she has been one of Edmund's victims. And then we follow June. June. And then we follow June, who is a young teenage runaway, and she has her own reasons for wanting to find Edmund and being in this, like, being along the river, but you don't quite know what they're all out for. And I can tell you that the only likable person in this story was Gary, but this didn't have the same effect as Saving Noah, because Saving Noah, I hated everyone apart from Katie. This and but I don't feel like they were meant to be, like, I don't feel like it was meant to be that way. Whereas this one, you're meant to hate everyone apart from Gary. Like, Gary is the only nice guy, and he shouldn't have been on this river, and I feel so sorry for him. He was the only sympathetic character, and you will understand why if you read this book. Everyone else is piece shit. Everyone else sucks. But that's the whole point of this book. This is an extreme horror book. You're not meant to like the characters, and it is meant to be gory and gruesome. And as you go along this story, you see Edmund kill, you get details of, other things going on, and just repulsive, like quite literally repulsive. But I had a good time with it. I gave the first one a 3.5 star, and I gave this one a 4 star. I really enjoyed this, and I hope that we get a third one, because if we get a third one, I know exactly who it's going to follow, and I'm kind of down for it because I feel like it would just be carnage. If it would follow who we think it's gonna follow. If you've read it, because like that last scene has me traumatized, like scarred. I'm like, what the fuck? But if they take out another, like if they take out a third book, I'm still gonna read it because this was a good traumatization. This was what it was meant to be. It's not meant to be an easy read. It's not meant to be likable characters. The gore is written really well, which, you know, some gore for this, like gore for the sake of gore doesn't work for me, but gore with a plot works. And this is gore with a plot, and I really enjoyed it. I also really like the legend of the Riverman. I think that it's very interesting. You don't know who he is. Like, is he a devil, a demon, an entity? You don't know. You just kind of have to go off the the fantasy of it, and it's quite interesting following the legends of him. Trina makes it so atmospheric, and even in the first book, the atmosphere is just so thick and rife that it's just very well written, and it's one of those that kind of remind me of a horror film, which I think is why I've enjoyed both of these books, is because it gives me that horror, that feeling that I get when I watch horror. I love a good slasher, and these are, for me, slashers, and I think it's done just so well. I definitely have more interest in this author. Um, there is a book, and I can't remember the name of it. I will pop it on screen here. This could be a potential for future thriller horror reviews. Also, if you have any books that you would like me to read and review, please leave them commented down below. I can add them to my list and hopefully get to them at some point. Because I'm doing this as a run-in series at the moment on my channel, I do want to keep the momentum going of, second trying authors, working off of authors that I've read before while also introducing new authors. So if you have any, link them down below and I will try and get to them. Um, so I'm going to leave off on a quote because Keith, the cop who is trying to get Edmund, says this, and this gives you an adequate representation of the characters, the disgusting characters you're going to follow. One thing Keith knew about women was that some of them needed punishment to learn anything. What form the punishment took depended on how attractive they were. This girl was not just Edmund Cox's type, but also Keith's. He liked them young. He also liked them to be wrong so he could set them right again. Bad girls needed powerful men to turn them into good women. they're all dicks apart from Gary. That's all I'm gonna say. I don't feel like that's a spoiler because like you go into these extreme horror books not really expecting to like any of the characters or feel sympathetic to them apart from like the victims essentially. But they all suck apart from Gary. And to just that poor man. Read this book. Read this book and you'll know exactly why I feel this way. And the final book that I have here is one that I was so lucky to receive an arc of. It comes out, I've forgotten. It comes out in February. It is An Education in Malice by S.T. Gibson. I will leave the release date on screen. This was fantastic. I gave this 4 stars. I love this. This is a Carmilla retelling, and I was so hyped because A Dowry of Blood was on my best list last year, and I was so lucky to get this arc. So yay! In this, we follow Laura, who is from Massive Two Shits, and every time I say that, it sounds like Massive Two Shits, but I can't say it properly. Massive Two Shits. I can't remember if it's Massachusetts or Mississippi now. Maybe it's Mississippi. Anyway, we follow Laura, and she is coming to St. Petunia's as a new student, and she is a freshman and she gets into De La Fontaine's poetry class. Now, this class is highly sought after. It's normally only seniors in here, but she wedges her way in there. Like, Laura is fire. We love Laura. She's also gay, and you discover this as it goes on. It's not a spoiler. Carmilla is a sapphic story. I haven't read Carmilla, and I think now that I've read this book, I think I'm going to go back and read Carmilla because I want to like compare the two. But essentially, you follow Laura. She shows up at this university, and she meets Carmilla, and Carmilla is in De La Fontaine's poetry class, and they have like a rivalry going on. This school is all about bloodshed, academic tears. You know, it's pretty dark academia essentially. In in this you follow the obsessions of these women. I love this. I love this so much. This has some, it has a little bit of smut sprinkled through, not too much, just enough. It has two hard hitting, ambitious um characters at its center, and it also has this like nuanced conversation of, abuse of power that is so well written into the story that you need to keep reminding yourself that De La Fontaine is a professor and Laura and Carmilla are her students. And this like the situations they end up in are an abuse of power. And you need to keep remembering yourself of that because this is written so well, done so subtly that it just is, it's the way it's realistic. That's what I'm trying to say. I love this. Oh my god, I love this so much. I gave it a 4 star and now I'm like, should it be a 4.5 star? Because I love so much about this book and the atmosphere. So there is like a plot that goes through the story. It didn't really feel like it had the targeted urgency that I wanted it to. There's these things going on and it should incite mass hysteria. It should incite panic, especially because this book is set in the late 60s. So, like, you know, it should incite some kind of panic, and it just didn't. It felt like there was no urgency, and I feel like we could have seen a lot more of the outside people in this world reacting to the story, maybe some more people questioning the story. See, this is why I put it as a 4 star because I did have some issues with it, specifically that storyline not being used to its full potential, but also I could see the spaces that, the author probably could put in exactly what was missing. And I think that's why I knocked it off a star. But the vibes in this are just immaculate. Like, I love the vibes, love the characters, even the ones that I was just iffy about. But then that's another thing that maybe made me bring this down is some of the side characters I wish we got to see more because it felt like they popped up when it was convenient, which of course, characters do. But there was like one specific character that I really enjoyed that I wish, had a more recurring role instead of just popping up a couple of times. And like they pop up in a scene that could have been really important, but it just kind of fell to the wayside. I will say though, Magdalena from A Dowry of Blood makes an appearance in this book, and my little pitter patter heart just got so happy. I love Magdalena, I love Alexia, I love Constana, so seeing Magdalena in this really made me happy. Also the ending of this book, I loved the ending. It could be classed as a risk, I think, to do the ending this book done. I loved it. And if you read this book and you want to talk about how you think things would happen after the ending of this book, let me know. My Instagram is always linked down below. You can message me and tell me like what you think would happen after the events of the final page. But if you're not sold on this already by my complete feverish love for it, I'm gonna leave you with a quote. Um, And this is a quote from De La Fontaine, the poetry professor who is obsessed with Carmilla. And then in turn, Laura becomes obsessed with Carmilla, and Carmilla becomes obsessed with Laura. And then they have this weird obsession with De La Fontaine, but it's really not obsession because it's kind of an abuse of power. Like, it's just so well weaved. So, this is De La Fontaine speaking to Carmilla. You have too much life left to live for me to ask you to throw it away. When I first met you, I saw a kindred spirit, a wildfire of a girl who would never be domesticated. But I was so afraid of losing you that I tried to tame you. I learned love at the hands of a monster, and in the end, I worry I done the same to you as was done to me. Read this book. Read this book. Please read this book. If you do read this book, I hope you love it. So, to just sum up, out of the 4 books that I read, we have This Is Where We Talk Things Out at a 3.5 star, Saving Noah at a 2 star, Ooh, Along the River of Flesh at a 4 star, and An Education in Malice at a 4 star. I would recommend well, the thing is it's really hard because I would not recommend Saving Noah because I just didn't like it and I don't think you would too, but that's my personal opinion. um things we um This Is Where We Talk Things Out, if you're looking for like a short, um fast paced, claustrophobic horror, down for that. Along the River of Flesh, I like essentially would have to recommend going to see The Riverman, and I do, but please be aware that these are extreme horror books and do not pick them up if you are not ready for that, or look up trigger warnings for that. And if you do pick up Saving Noah, which you shouldn't, look up trigger warnings. And then An Education in Malice, I just recommend across the board. Like, actually, trigger warnings for that too. So, like, I would say the big one I would recommend from this video is An Education in Malice, and the one that I wouldn't recommend is Saving Noah. But I guess that surprises no one after you have heard me talk about them. So that is all I have for you today. Those are the 4 thriller horrors I've read recently. If you have any recommendations and would like to hear my thoughts or um, anything like that, leave it in the comments below. I would love to hear from you. If you have read any of these books, let me know your thoughts. No spoilers, please. Spoiler free zone unless stated otherwise. I thank you so very much for watching. Remember to stay safe, happy, and healthy, and I will see you next time. Bye.
Pick it up from the top, hit restart. So far it's been